Hey guys, and welcome back to the second episode of our Zabbix related channel. And the topic for today, it won't be anything new for you. Again, we're gonna talk about how can you actually install a Zabbix server on your virtual or on your physical machine. I know that there's like really a lot of videos and blog posts and other type of the content about this topic, how to install and configure the Zabbix server, but we should definitely make one, the official one, from the Zabbix company, about the Zabbix software. And at this point, I believe that you probably already saw our first video, which was kind of introduction about to this all series that we're planned to make and shoot quite frequently for you, for our community. And that was actually a bit funny because, the video was around 4 minutes, and believe me or not, it took us basically all the evening to shoot those 4 minutes. So today, a lot of different things will be also in place, like screencast of the computer. So we will actually configure and install the Zabbix. So I really hope that this won't take as much time, and maybe we will even be able to do that in the first shot. So first of all, what we're going to be using for this task, for the installation. So I have a CentOS virtual machine on my computer. It's just a virtual machine without any specific settings. It is just a default minimal install from the CentOS official webpage. I also have just a notepad to show you a couple of things if it will be required, and a Zabbix.com official Zabbix webpage from which we'll actually be taking Zabbix repository to install all the packages. So you know that it is actually possible to install and configure Zabbix in multiple ways. So first one, the most common one, is to do that with the packages. The second one might be a little bit more complicated, but it provides a little bit wider functionality, is to compile a Zabbix from the sources. And the third one, basically quite new thing and a quite new feature inside a Zabbix, you could use a Zabbix Docker containers, which probably could also be another topic for the next videos. So we'll be doing that from the packages on the CentOS machine. And then about the requirements. You should know that Zabbix actually consists of 3 components, which is a Zabbix server, a Zabbix frontend, and a database. In terms of the database, it is the place where all the configuration data is stored. All the configuration plus the history. And currently, Zabbix does support 5 database engines, which is MySQL, any MySQL fork as example MariaDB, then Postgres, Oracle, and IBM DB2. In terms of operating systems, where do you want to install the Zabbix server? It really depends. We will be using a CentOS, I already mentioned that. You could use a Debian or any other operating system to which we have a packages published online. So let's get actually started to the screen. And there we go. I have let's just verify get etc Red Hat release. It is CentOS 7.6, absolutely clean and empty installation. The only things that I've changed, and you need to keep that in mind, I have SELinux disabled because we will be talking about how to configure Zabbix. In this video, we won't be talking how to deal with SELinux, how to compile your own models. That will remain for another topics, or you will have to deal with it on your own, because SELinux, it is a little bit different thing aside of the Zabbix. And the second thing that I have disabled is a firewall. A firewall which must be edited, and a new rules must be added for Zabbix to work properly. I will write in the notepad on the ports that you need to open for Zabbix to work. First of all, for the front end, we will need either the port 80 or 443 for HTTPS. For the Zabbix server or Zabbix proxy, we will need 151, and then 150 for the Zabbix agent. And all of these, of course, are TCP. And later we will talk about also in which case exactly those ports are being used. So these are the ones that you should open for your installation. Then let's get back to our CLI. So that's about it, about the setup, the beginning, and let's actually start the installation process. So first of all, we need to add a repo, a Zabbix repository, where we have all of the packages with our software that we will need to install on our machine. So I have a Zabbix.com official webpage, and we need to go to the download section. And then the first column or the first page about install Zabbix from the package. And then we need to choose a version. Well, we will take the latest one, the latest stable, which is 4.0, which is a long-term support version, and the distribution of operating system. So this is the choice you can make. And quite often we get a question like, which is recommended, which is better to use Zabbix with? And there is no big difference. If you would ask my opinion, then you should choose the one which is more familiar to you, because, well, you will have to work with it, you will have to configure it, and it will be just easier for you. So in our setup, it is CentOS version 7. And as a backend database, we will be using MySQL. Again, support the databases, already mentioned it. Which should you choose? Choose the one which is more familiar to you, or the one for which you have database administrators, because again, you will have to handle all the database related stuff, the performance tuning, maybe the partitioning, some troubleshooting. It will definitely take the place together with the Zabbix. So in our case, it will be MySQL fork MariaDB. So, basically MySQL. Then let's just scroll down, and that's all we need. This is the line that we need for our setup, the repo. So just copy paste this without hash. Then let's go back to CLI, and let's try to paste it. Paste and click enter. So right now we've just added a Zabbix repository to our virtual machine, and currently we can try to first of all yum search Zabbix, and we should already see some of our official Zabbix packages. So it takes some time. Faster internet connection will of course make things also faster. So there we go, the output. We do see all of the Zabbix related packages like agent, Zabbix get utility, Java gateway, proxy, Zabbix release sender server, and Zabbix web. So what we will actually need, let's start. We need to yum install. First of all, it is absolutely wise to have a Zabbix get for troubleshooting. Then we will need a Zabbix agent, because it's also absolutely okay to have a Zabbix agent installed on the same machine with a Zabbix server and monitor the health of that machine. Then we will need Zabbix-server, and after dash you need to choose which database engine do you plan to use. In our case, it will be MySQL fork. That's why Zabbix-server-MySQL. The next one is Zabbix web, the front end, which also has a restriction or definition to the database engine you plan to use. So just like with a server, Zabbix-web-MySQL. And what else? We need a database engine. I told that we will be using MariaDB simply because it is available from the box when you install a CentOS minimal install virtual machine or a physical one. So just MariaDB-server. And I will simply confirm all the installation by typing again -yes for confirm. And this will again take a couple of the seconds to download and install anything. So downloading packages. Actually, we do have webinars that are about how you can install and configure the Zabbix server in just 5 minutes. And believe it or not, this video might take I don't know, it could be 10, 15, 20 minutes. But if I would not explain all the steps and talk about what you need to do to get the result, You can indeed install and configure a fully functional Zabbix server installation in 5 or even less minutes. The most time that we are spending is simply on the download of the packages and installation. So that's it. And we're still running the installation process. Drink the water. Should be done in a second. And the last two. Verifying, and there we go. So we did install all the packages, and then there are actually a couple of ways from where we can continue this. We could start with the configuration of the front end, we could start with the configuration file of the Zabbix server, or we could start with the database. And I will start with the database. First of all, let's type systemctl start MariaDB. So we will start our database engine. By default, there are no password for the root user in the MariaDB database engine. So to enter MySQL CLI, we just need to type MySQL without any additional settings like the username or the password. And you can see that we are inside the MariaDB MySQL CLI. So what do we need to do? You know that Zabbix requires a database, which basically means that we need to create a database for our Zabbix server installation. And the command is pretty straightforward, and well, it is a create database, then a database name, and I will make it Zabbix. Then the character set UTF-8 and collate UTF-8 underscore bin. This last part, set UTF-8, collate UTF-8 bin, it is kind of optional in terms of the MySQL, but it is a requirement for a Zabbix server. And if you would do all the installation based on our documentation, then you would see that UTF-8 is a requirement for a Zabbix database. So you should definitely add this in the end. So click enter, query OK. We've just created a database, and then we need to add a new user that will have a permission to the Zabbix database and will be able to actually operate with it in terms of adding new configuration or adding a history to the history tables, and we're getting it out to display on the graph. So grant all privilege on Zabbix database. So this part is the name of the database, then dot, and you add a star to specify on all tables. So we are granting all privilege on Zabbix database to all tables inside to Zabbix user. So this will be the username, Zabbix, at localhost, which means that this user will be able to log into this database only from the localhost IP. Identified by, and then in the text you need to add a password, and since this is just a training, a tutorial, we will again be using a password Zabbix. So we have a database called Zabbix, username Zabbix, and a password also Zabbix. Semicolon in the end, click enter, query OK. So we created a user. And we can type show databases, and you see there is a Zabbix database, but it is empty, which means that we need to import the schema. And where can we get it from? Actually, when we downloaded the Zabbix server package, we've also downloaded the schema file that contains, first of all, the schema of the Zabbix database, then the default data, and also the default images that are used in the maps as example. So to get it, we need to move to user share doc Zabbix -server MySQL. I'm just using tab for autocomplete, and you should do the same. Don't try to just copy my location of this directory, because if you will have a, let's say, different minor version, the path might change. So let's go here, type ls to see the files, and there we go. We have a create.sql.jz. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna extract this schema file and pipe it to MySQL Zabbix database. Right now I am specifying that I am piping it inside a Zabbix database. I am not specifying the credentials, username and password, because I have a root user that doesn't have any password. So this will be enough. Click enter. This again will take a second or two. Depends on the specs of your computer in this case, not in the internet connection. So there we go. And let's go cd to home directory, and we can actually verify in the database that we do have those files and schema imported, uploaded to our database. So let's again type MySQL, use Zabbix to use Zabbix database, and show tables to see actual content inside this database, which is 144 tables, which means that we succeeded and we did create a database for a Zabbix. So we can continue our configuration steps. What's next? We can edit the Zabbix server configuration file. And there's just a couple of things that we need to change and specify in it for Zabbix to function in our new installation. And all of the Zabbix configuration files in the installation from the packages are stored in etc Zabbix, and then it's Zabbix_server.conf. So let's go here. And what we're looking for, we can leave everything as it is default, except let's look for the parameter DB name. It is already default value Zabbix, so that's the database name. In our case, it is also Zabbix, so we can leave it as it is. Then DB user Zabbix, just like in our case, so don't touch this. And DB password, it's blank, so we need to add this parameter. DB password equals, remember we specified a password identified by Zabbix. So just like a DB user, just like a DB name. And besides, side note, be careful when you're adding these parameters, because one typo, or let's say you see the default setting is DBP uppercase. If one of these letters would be lowercase, you would not be able to start the Zabbix server process. So always be careful when you're editing the Zabbix server configuration file, and make sure that you won't make any typos. So we've added a password, username. Let's save the configuration file, and now we can actually try to start our Zabbix server. And we can do that by typing systemctl start Zabbix-server. Click enter. At this moment, most of the users usually think that, oh, right, it started without any error messages, so probably everything is fine. But always verify that your Zabbix server is running by checking the log file. And all of the log files for the Zabbix components are located in var log Zabbix and Zabbix_server.log. And we can see that, yes, Zabbix server started successfully. All of the pre-fork processes are started. We are already getting some messages about not supported items. But the process itself is started successfully. So we know the database is configured, Zabbix server is up and running, and then there's a last part, the Zabbix frontend. So we could actually open the web page of the Zabbix and log in to do our initial configuration. To configure the frontend, we need to change just one thing. If we're doing that from the packages, most of the PHP parameters are already specified and overridden by the Zabbix configuration file. But we need to edit a configuration file in httpd then conf.d zabbix.conf. In this file, you will see a couple of PHP parameters, and one of them is PHP value date.timezone Riga. That's where we are located right now, so we don't need to change that. The only thing, we need to uncomment this setting. And you won't be able to start your Zabbix frontend until you will do that. So uncomment the setting, save the configuration file, and that's it. The only thing that we need to do right now is systemctl start httpd, which is Apache, which is our web engine. So start the service, and at this moment we should be able to open our browser and try to add, well, we'll actually be using IP. So you can type IPA for all in your CLI, and we can see my IP address, which is like this. Then go to the browser, type IP address /Zabbix. That's the thing you should always add after you install it from the packages again. Click enter, and then you will see the first time configuration, something like a wizard. And this configuration wizard will actually create a new configuration file in the CLI. So let's just go through it. We see welcome to the Zabbix 4.0, which already means that Zabbix is kind of functioning currently. And let's go to the next step. We can see the names, description of PHP parameters, which are required for the proper Zabbix functioning. And we can see the current value and which one is required. Again, if you install a Zabbix from the packages, well, 99% that you won't have to worry about these. Everything here should be green. If somehow you did somewhat and one of these is not green, not okay, then you need to edit your php.ini or the Zabbix conf in httpd conf.d zabbix.conf and actually specify the required, at least the required setting for the parameter. So click next. Then a database type. Remember, when we install the packages, we had to choose a database engine. And in our case, it was MariaDB, so it's kind of MySQL. That's why in the database type, we don't have anything else except MySQL. If we would be installing a PostgreSQL, then we would have a Postgres here. Database host, this is location where our database backend is installed. And in our case, it is indeed localhost, so we can leave it as it is. Database port, 0, use default port. We didn't change it, so it is a default one, which is 3306. So we can leave it blank. Database name is Zabbix. The user is Zabbix. And the password, remember, it's also Zabbix. So next step. Then the Zabbix server details, because the frontend does not only performs a connection to the database, but also to the Zabbix server binary process itself. So we need to define a host, and it's still a local host because all three components are installed on the same virtual machine. The port, that's the default listening port of the Zabbix server. And remember, I had a note here in my notepad about the ports that you should open in your firewalls, which is 151, one of them. Here we go. Then a name. Well, this one will be just a name of the front-end tab in your browser, nothing more. So we can do this like training video, and that will visualize just here in the top in the tab name. Next step, just pre-installation summary about all of the settings that we filled in. Next step, congratulations, you have successfully installed a Zabbix frontend. That's it. And you can see I told you a minute ago that this wizard actually creates a configuration file in, we can see right now, etc Zabbix web zabbix.conf.php. Click finish. And you can see the login screen. And remember that the default username is admin with an uppercase A, and a default password is just like in a case with our database, Zabbix, lowercase. Click enter to log in, and there you go. You've installed a Zabbix server on your virtual or physical machine, the latest release 4.05 with a MariaDB database engine. And you can already see one problem on our local host Zabbix server because I didn't start the Zabbix agent. So that's why we have a problem. Zabbix agent on Zabbix server is unreachable for 5 minutes. And that's it. That's the Zabbix server, our monitoring solution with a full functionality. It's not like a demo or some limited functionality. That's all we have currently. And there you go. Well, what can I say? I don't know how much it took. I guess something about 15-20 minutes this case. But you should definitely give it a try. Install it on your virtual machines. You don't need to buy some huge, giant, expensive server to test out Zabbix capabilities. You can just download some virtualization platform on your computer. It's a laptop in my case. Create a small virtual machine. Mine has 1 core and 1 gig of memory, so not a big requirements at all. And just follow the steps described in this video, or visit our documentation if, let's say, you are using a different operating system. Then just a couple of things, a couple of the commands might change, but the logic remains the same. And I really hope that you will be able to install your Zabbix installation and start to monitor your environment, or maybe just your computer. Well, at least something, because, well, that's what we do and that's what we believe in. The monitoring is important in any environment. And yeah, well, that's it for this video. Definitely stay tuned. Leave your questions in the comments. Click those like buttons. Subscribe if you like our content and want to see it more. Because, again, we have big plans and the schedule will be pretty tight. So you can expect the new videos at least once per week, I hope. Maybe even often. We'll see. And yeah, thank you again for watching, for your time, and see you in the next releases. Goodbye.